What's up again, everybody? The looming rotation continues to approach, so let's talk about the top 10 win conditions in the new modern meta. I'm ranking this top 10 in least viable to most viable format, meaning that the number 1 team is going to be the most strong going forward and should remain pretty strong even as new sets come out. And of course, I'm basing this primarily on power level currently, so if something is really strong or really weak, then it'll be towards the top or the bottom of the list. Let's begin. At number 10, we have Super Rare Angela. In my opinion, the most powerful infiltrate team lists were the ones that ran a ton of blanking and cube. Now that a large portion of that blanking is rotated and cube is banned, this team will have to reform in a lot of ways. I still view it as a viable team and probably something in like that tier 3 range, just because it's totally uninteractive. Unless your opponent blanks Super Rare Angela, then you're just getting damage each turn. You just put them on a clock. It also has its own built-in ramp engine in Rare Ricochet, which lets you draw a die for each infiltrate trigger. However, without the core of control cards to keep your opponent at bay, this one may struggle and fall off the list. At number 9, we have Common Hulk. Common Hulk teams gain and lose some credibility in the rotation. This team loses Batgirl, which made for a nice little secondary piece that acted as both removal and board wipe. Teams like Hulk had no chance in the previous meta because everyone had either won or lost by turn 5, but now this has a shot as a win condition. It feels more at home as a secondary win condition on a Fixit team right now, but with the addition of a few powerful cards in upcoming sets, this could be a thing going forward. At number 8, we have a Toon. A Toon is a very good, very flexible keyword. The fact that cube is gone makes the keyword feel balanced and not totally disgusting. With multiple Toon characters on one team, you can deal with control threats rather easily, and Pseudo Dragon can turn 1 Toon damage into 2, which is nearly as good as cube, and it sits out constantly. Unfortunately, it's just a bit too slow currently to set up and doesn't have enough punch or impact. This is a team that I think will improve with the release of the Avengers Infinity set, as that Wasp card with Toon and the 2/2 buff for each Toon trigger is quite simply gross. I think it's 3 cost. That's really powerful for a 3 cost. I'd keep my eye out for this one and hold on to my super rare Yanti if I were you. Here's a really fun one. We have at number 7, Captain America Chemistry Project. So this win condition may be a little bit unknown to some people, so let me do a quick rundown. This is a 5 cost character, shield character with a top side 2/5/5, and an ability that says at the end of your attack step, if Captain America was blocked but not KO'd, he deals damage equal to his attack to target opponent. So the prevailing theory with this card is to just buff him like crazy and then either push for damage that is unblocked because your opponent doesn't want to block it, or they choose to block it by either you forcing them to block or them just choosing to block, and you just pull this back with Hawkingbird and then deal his full damage. Just anything that distracts him back or pulls him back into the field, as long as he was blocked, means he gets to deal his damage directly to your opponent's health. It's a fairly low cost win condition based on the number of cards that you need to actually win, just this and some sort of a buffing mechanism, and probably Hawkingbird. So I see a lot of flexibility in this win condition going forward, and I think it is going to do some really nice things. It can get easily shut down by Shriek or Blob, but then again, so do a lot of win conditions on this list, just because those cards are really powerful. So I would keep my eye out for this one as well. I think this starts to climb in ranks as people continue to experiment with it, as it got experimented with right before Yanti and Cube broke everything. At number 6, we have a win condition that is not nearly as cheap as Captain America, but is definitely fun and powerful and hard to deal with if it lands. Ring of Winter and Dragons. So when I first made this list a long time ago, it's been a while since I started actually working on this video. When I first made this list a long time ago, this was towards the back end of the list. This was like spot number 9 or 10. And I had it there because it lost one of the most important pieces in my mind, which was a 4 cost white dragon that would get reduced to 2 cost when you ran the silver dragon that would come out and reduce all of your dragons by 2. My instinct was losing that card meant losing a lot of the speed of this deck, but it turns out that's not necessarily the case, as the 6 cost rare gold dragon is really good. It's not as clean or as easy as just buying a 4 cost or even a 2 cost with the reduction from silver dragon, but you can still use the cost reduction from the silver dragon and use the Ring of Winter Global to get a 3 cost version of that gold dragon, and then use Ring of Winter, of course, to bring it out. Then you have this really nice huge body dragon that has a Toon on top of the Breath Weapon 3. And dragons in general are just really tough to deal with, because if they get blanked, you still have like an 8/8 or a 6/8 or some just giant body in the field, and Ring of Winter can just keep pulling them out. Ring of Winter being an action does get hard countered by Scarlet Witch, but if your opponent's running all of these control pieces just to stop your dragons or slow them down, then they're either one, a total control deck, which we'll talk about here in a moment, or they're sacrificing a lot of pieces of flexibility on their team to stop you from playing your dragons. Essentially, if your opponent's not just running villain control and they just have a bunch of control pieces, then they've bought so much into their control pieces that they're probably not invested into their win condition. Of course, that's if they're not playing villain control. Now, you may think that there's not a lot of ways for WizKids to incorporate dragon love into coming sets, not a lot of ways for them to incorporate things that synergize well with dragons, but they have started using things like Breath Weapon on outside of D&D cards. We saw it most recently in the Thor set on one of the copies of Surtur. I think it was the uncommon copy of Surtur, but correct me if I'm wrong. So because they've done that, they could technically print a card that says all of your Breath Weapon characters get whatever. You know, they can give it some love somehow. It's just a question of, do they plan to do that? And if they do, is it anything that can really contribute to this team as it is currently? If not, then we can expect this team to sort of stagnate in place and not have a lot of things change in and out on it. Maybe a form of ramp or maybe a form of blanking, but the core of these cards will remain the same, and so the power level of these cards and this team will probably remain the same, sort of middle of the road right now. At number 5, we have a win condition that I may be valuing a bit too highly. It may need to be moved back on this list a little further. We have Team Up. For a while now, I've valued Team Up pretty highly just because of the flexibility, the sheer amount of things that can go with it that make it strong as a win condition. For a Team Up team, your win condition is literally to just go find the best control or aggressive cards from each affiliation, slam them on a team, and then just go, right? And it's for that reason that I really like Team Up as a win condition, because I think it has so much staying power and longevity. Because more cards get released, you'll just be able to glean the best from the top, things that are really broken that have just a random affiliation, put it all together, and then slap on Team Up, and you're good to go. Now, I do recognize that I could be overvaluing this card a lot because we haven't really seen a Team Up team make a big splash within the meta, but I feel like it's just so powerful and so flexible that putting it any lower on this list is just too imprudent for me to do. Expect to have this as a competitive option for a long time. At number 4 on this list, we have so many things it's hard to explain. We have just this full gamut of sidekick teams. There's a lot of ways that these teams can be constructed, so it's hard to really pinpoint one exact way, but in general, these teams include cards like Dum Dum Dugan that gets buffed per sidekick on your side of the field, Super Rare Jubilee that pings for damage each time you feel the sidekick, one of several of the different Wongs that are really good, a couple of other random allies that you could fit onto this team. There's a lot of ways to construct a sidekick team, and a lot of them are just very, very strong. Slap on Insect Global plus some buffs, and you have unblockable sidekicks, at least one a turn. Professor X Global pulls you a sidekick on both your turn and your opponent's turn if you pay for it. Mimic Ramp makes you want to field sidekicks, so it's a natural fit. It's just a really, really clean aggro team. And if there's any sidekick love whatsoever in any of the coming sets, this is going to be really strong. I mean, really strong. Keep your eye out for sidekick teams, especially as they get refined and people get good with their aggro. At number 3, we have Boom Boom. And this is the common Boom Boom, not the super rare Boom Boom, though I'm sure you already knew that. Common Boom Boom is really strong and pretty flexible overall because she works with both ramp basic action dice and damage dealing basic action dice. Being a 2-cost herself, she is really fast, and when you combine her with the other 2-cost of Yuan-Ti, the common Yuan-Ti that is unblockable after you've played an action dice and also has a Toon, you're dealing like 5 damage if you're running Power Bolt or Magic Missile. You're dealing 3 damage each time you play Investigation, which is great ramp because you're probably ramping into other investigations or other action dice that trigger off Boom Boom and Yanti. Then you get to push the unblockable damage. It's really, really strong. You could also do Boom Boom and Morph, though I think that one is a little slower than Boom Boom Yanti just because unblockable damage is really, really good. She is very much hard countered by Scarlet Witch, so you do have to be aware of Scarlet Witch and have some countermeasures against it, something like Shriek and something like the Acerarak Global that allows you to re-roll an action die one time during your main step. But if your opponent is missing their rolls, or if their team is slower, or if they don't have one of those control pieces on their team, then you're going to win really fast. You just turn this into a burn team, an aggro team that just goes and tries to kill them by like turn 5, and you'll probably get there too if you give it a shot. I see this team being very, very strong going forward into the new meta. One of the teams that you do have to watch out for. All right, at number 2, we have Mr. Fixit. This should come as no surprise, as this card has been pretty insanely hyped up even before the set released. This was one of the spoiled images before Thor came out, and everyone was kind of going crazy over it because it is very strong. Being a 6 cost, it has to be pretty strong in order to be playable. This is extremely playable. Being a 6 cost, you wouldn't think it's fast, but it is actually fast as well. This is really fast and easy to put together. You basically get to lethal by turn 4 or 5. You can get there with a variety of methods. You can make him have Overcrush. You can wipe the board with Hellfire Club and just push for insane amounts of damage. He just does insane amounts of damage. Combine him with some ping global like Magic Missile, and you're off to the races. This card is really strong. It is tough to play against because it is so oppressively strong. You can't really block it because your opponent's usually giving it Overcrush or wiping your board. It's very easy to put together. I can't hype it up enough. It deserves the hype. It's at number 2. And finally, at number 1, we have Villain Control, and in many cases, Collector Control, featuring Norman Osborn, aka Nobby. This is in my number 1 slot because the villain affiliation is just so insanely synergistic and powerful currently in the meta. All of the top control pieces, every single one of them, almost to the T, are all villains, and they all feed into this Norman Osborn win condition where you just burn your opponent out based on the number of villains. What's better is Norman Osborn counts the villains on both your side and your opponent's side of the field, so if your opponent is running these control pieces or the ramp pieces like the Spot. Basically, if your opponent is running just about any tier 1 team, it's probably going to have a trigger for Nobby on it. You combine all of those really powerful control pieces with Nobby, which is a great win condition that's cheap, with great stat lines, so even if he gets blanked, you can still attack with him. And you slap on Collector as well, which is, again, another villain that provides an insane amount of flexibility, both being able to purchase your dice and purchase your opponent's dice and their win cons and their ramp or whatever control piece they might be using. And you just have an insanely flexible, powerful team that really is the team to beat and the team to build to beat in the current meta going forward. So there you have it. There's my much belated list. What do you think about these win conditions? Did I miss anything? Let me know in the comments below if you disagree or agree. How would you rank these listed thus far? Thanks for watching, and as always, only you can prevent forest fires.